Season's greetings. Welcome to our show, Ghosts R N.E.A.R, where we discuss and actively explore various aspects of paranormal-related topics. I am your host, Keith Johnson, the co-founder of New England Anomalies Research. My co-founder and normal co-host, Sandra, is again in the control booth, working her magic in there, doing everything that's right, and we'd like to wish everybody the blessings of the season, and special hello to Paul and Al of 94HJY, who do so much to get us through that morning rush and add a little stability to the commute. And also we'd like to say hello to our the staff at our favorite little store in the airport plaza, which Sandra and I go in a lot, and you know who you are. It's a wonderful staff there, and they're always so courteous, and especially stressful time of year, they make everything a lot easier with their bedside manner, so to speak. So, hello to you. Now, this evening, we have a very special guest, and actually a very special topic, something we don't always get to go very much in depth during our episodes, but that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about the Deliverance ministry, and I happen to have a Deliverance minister with me, Father Ed Brodrick. Welcome to Ghosts R N.E.A.R.
Thank you very much. It's I've always enjoyed your show, and
thank you.
And of course, you and I have been good friends for a long time. So thank you for the honor and the privilege of letting me be here and talk to you, have this length of a chat with you and with you.
And welcome to our studio audience. Always glad to have you here. Live studio audience. They are alive.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yes, they are alive. Yes, smiling faces. Always good to see you guys. Well, the Deliverance ministry, something that not everybody is familiar with, and of course, you and I approach it from a Christian standpoint.
Yes.
And but could you basically explain, in a condensed version, what the Deliverance ministry entails and what it is actually?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, telling a minister to keep things brief, that's funny. But no, well, Deliverance.
You only have a half hour.
Oh, yeah, well, that's okay. We got it covered. Well, yes, the Deliverance ministry simply is when a person has been afflicted by an evil spirit, maybe usually it's people who do experimentation. Maybe they want to go check out a house that's haunted, or maybe they play with the Ouija board, or maybe they do something that opens a door to the other side, to spirits, and then what happens, or even not even that, maybe a traumatic event, an accident, or even violence done to a person can bring an attachment. And what the Deliverance ministry does is we bring relief to the person who's been afflicted. We work towards separating that person from that entity, that negative energy, and bring that person back to a restored state of peace of mind, and also attempt to get that person, once again, reconnected with God so that they can continue on and perhaps be even benefited by having the experience in the first place.
Right. Okay. Very, very good definition.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. And of course, in the field of paranormal investigation, and of course, you and I have worked together.
Yes, sir.
We have worked together, and we've worked together with other teams. And you yourself, of course, have worked with numerous paranormal groups.
Yes, I have.
Not necessarily just investigating, but if things start to go awry, if
I guess you can call me a consultant.
Yes, a consultant is good.
Contractor.
Yes. Right, exactly, exactly. But you've been called in when things get a little disturbing, and I think it's always good to have somebody there that can kind of step in and do an intervention if things do start going awry.
Absolutely.
And we've both seen that happen.
Yeah.
Usually we're called in after the fact, but Sandra and I have been on many situations where things suddenly start happening. And one example, of course, years ago when we were members of the Atlantic Paranormal Society, we were called into this, and like I said, things are getting pretty bad by the time we're called in.
Sure.
This woman had taken her. She was an amateur investigator. There are very few professional investigators in the paranormal.
Sure.
And she had gone into an partially abandoned asylum. This is the section that was abandoned, and she felt overcome. Being a mother, she came in with her teenage son and his best friend and some other relatives, and she felt really overwhelmed by sadness.
Sure.
She had the impression, which we all have an ability to greater or lesser extent to pick up on these things. She felt that a little girl was contacting her, an overwhelming sorrow for this lost child. And what did she say? Her maternal instincts kicked in. She said, "You can come home with me. I'll take care of you.
Right,
I'll help
right.
you out." And it took her at her word. And the thing did follow her. And I say the thing because it did not turn out to be a little girl at all. It's not a human spirit. And one thing after another, the steps, which we're familiar with, going on in her apartment. And to compound things, she lived across from an electrical plant. An electrical station, so all that energy coming in, which is not a healthy situation anyway.
No, so it already weakened the person's condition. So by the time, so I guess you would say that spirit was more parasitic.
Yes,
Right,
I would say it was very, very parasitic, exactly. And she was kind of on the cusp of actual possession, being taken over at the time. She was having periods where she blacked out, started talking in another voice, according to her family. So we were called in just in time.
Sure.
But you've been to situations like that.
Oh, absolutely. It reminds me of a particular case. When you're called into this type of work, it's not something that I wake up in the morning, I'm eating my Cheerios, and I go, oh, I think I want to start poking sticks in the devil's face.
Right, exactly.
It's
Good
something
point.
that I was called to do, and it just seemed like I would fall into these things. I would just end up in the right place at the right time, and they would have a unique problem. In this case, there was a gentleman that I was served with on a Coast Guard ship in Hawaii. And they had just gotten to a place that had purportedly been haunted by a little boy. And so they would hear the little pitter-patter of feet up and down, and then the water would run on, and then would turn off, the lights would flicker, and there'd be a little giggling. So they had been Lord of the Rings fans. So I like Lord of the Rings, so I make references to that. And in the movie The Lord of the Rings, especially in the first one, when Gandalf dies, there's this big, huge, hulking demon that is fighting the wizard. And he's huge. He's probably maybe, 20 feet tall, all flames and smoke. And it's called the Balrog. So I said to the woman, if the Balrog appeared at your house, would you want it to come into your home? Would you invite it in? No, of course not. I said, okay. Demons there are certain laws, just like in the physical world, there's certain laws in the spirit realm. And so demons have to operate by permission. One way or another, permission has to be granted for them to even begin.
Invitation, the law of invitation.
Right. So, like for instance, the myth of the vampire can't go into the threshold to invite them. It comes back to that spiritual law. So I said, if you were smart, and I said these things are ancient since day one, since before Adam, and they're evil and they're predatorial. So would they show up in your house as a giant Balrog and frighten you? No. What they would do is they would appear as a little boy, like you said, that maternal instinct would come in. Oh, you can come home with me. Now, once you receive that spirit, you're receiving everything that it can do. At that point, when the supernatural things start to manifest gradually, it is parasiting your power and ability yourself. Demons don't have the power or the authority to make it rain or do all these signs, but they have power. So because human beings were given authority in the earth to exercise dominion over the earth with a physical body. So these beings don't have it. They parasite off it. Maternal instinct, little boy. Next thing you know, that house is haunted. And I said, that was a demon. And this woman's like, oh, no, it's not a demon. It's just a little boy. I said, if it's a good little boy, then the blessing I do isn't going to affect it at all. If it was a demon, it'll be gone. You want me to do it? Well, at the time, I was up in Alaska, and I was on the phone with this woman. And I was explaining there's no distance in the spiritual realm. So if I exercise authority and dominion and do the blessing in Alaska, it's going to remove the spirit down in Hawaii. So I did that, and gone. No other manifestations after that. And she said, wow, I have no idea what I could have invited into my life. I said,
well, that's it.
yeah. And
Deception.
Deception.
Yes, they're not going to usually manifest, at least at the beginning, in the onset, in a form
Right.
that's
In fact, they'll be doing you favors.
frightening. Right.
Well, that's the whole, the whole myth with the genie.
Yeah. The djinn. That's
the djinn is all. It's never the 3 wishes.
right.
There were infinite amount of wishes. You can ask for whatever you want, but there's always a high price tag for that. Eventually, it will consume you.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And Will Smith is not going to show up.
No.
Who plays
No.
the genie?
Yeah, exactly. Will Smith.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But speaking of the weather, we're going to take a short break for just a moment, a minute or so, and because the weather has been going crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, it's like they say about New England weather. If you get bored, wait a minute.
That is so true.
It's going to change.
True.
But here's a little weather experience that we had some time ago. If you want to bring that up now. This is in Warwick, Rhode Island. What do you think, Sandra? And Sandra, I must say, makes a wonderful newscaster out in the weather like that. reporting
I
on
thought
the
she was mastering the weathers perfectly.
Oh, great, great. I mean, thank God it didn't cause more damage, but that
Yeah.
whole area was, they had a great deal of erosion there, and they had to
Sure.
rebuild. They weren't able to totally rebuild it. It was just, the wall was all broken out and everything like that. But
Well, that's one way to test, the architecture of the building. Yeah, definitely.
right, right. All right, some of the, could you explain like a typical case? Not that there is such thing as a perfectly
I was going to
typical
say.
case
Right.
that you're going to go
Right.
on, but a situation that you might find yourself in and how you might deal with it.
Sure. Most of the cases I do get, I would say, most of the cases I would get would be where I would get the phone call either from you or from somebody, or even I've been in line at Dunkin' Donuts getting a cup of coffee.
Yes.
And then next thing you know, someone's talking and they're like, oh, I have this problem in my house. I wonder if you can help me. So right there, I will go through a little litany of questions that I always have in mind. Okay, what kind of things happen? Are there patterns that have been happening? For instance, are you having freak accidents at a certain amount of time? Are you waking up between such and such time? Smells, you name
Yes.
you know what I'm talking
Right.
about. And so if these things are going on, then I just go and assess it some more. I go, well, did you talk to your pastor or your priest about this? Well, I don't have a church. A lot of people are in church, so okay. So then I'll go and then I'll ask him more questions, and then I'll actually do a house visit. And I'll go with the house visit intending to bless a home. I'll give you an example of like a typical case. It's like as I'm going to do one thing, something always manifests differently. I was going to this house in Providence, and all I was going to do is bless the house because they were going to give the house to their daughter. I went and started the house blessing, and there was a woman that came by to visit. Now, she was the maid. She wasn't supposed to be working that day. She just came by to see her friend, have tea. As soon as I started the blessing on the 3rd floor, she's on the 1st floor, I hear her scream, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. It was the maid.
Oh, really?
I wasn't even there for the maid. But the power of the blessing will provoke
Yeah.
anything that's there. That's the whole point. Now, that goes back to another thing. where you and I both agree, paranormal cases that go on and they'll say, they start provoking demons,
Right.
and spirits, and
Yep.
then they leave the place worse than it was originally.
Right.
And so I guess you would say the typical one would be like that. I ask a bunch of questions. If they meet that kind of criteria, then I will go into a time of prayer and fasting. And I always make sure I have a sense of peace. I always wait for that green light.
Right.
Then if I have the green light, then I have confidence, and then I'll go to that case. And like what happened with that woman, that the house got blessed, but her friend, who literally, she was in the second stage, she was in the oppression and obsession stage before the possession part, right in that
Right.
area. And that the voice manifested 3 times. There were 3 different spirits that were attached to her. Come to find out, her dad was possessed back in San Miguel and had
really?
an exorcist, had to take care of business there. So again, I learned a lot, bloodline, all kinds of stuff.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So I guess you could say that's pretty much how I roll. Kind of like that. Yeah.
When you go into one of these situations, do you ever find yourself that you've been recognized? Now, I mean, like a spirit recognizes you?
Yes.
You've dealt with this before, or the word's out,
Yeah, well, I have a mentor that it happened to as well in Africa. And he's a bishop over there, Bishop Ayamba, and he had a case where he drove out a spirit out of, it was a big situation of a convention, and went to another convention like 6 months later, and the demon's like, Ayamba, why do you follow us? So in that case, yeah, there was a spirit that was was actually was in a mom. She just joined the Bible study. It was a Bible study, and I was passing around the crown of thorns. And it looked up at me and had this look of recognition, and then it yelled, ah, as it's holding onto the crown. So I knew it was trying to disrupt things, but I also recognized it because it was something that had been associated with that family and somebody else. So yeah.
Wow. Now, a friend of mine who's actually recently retired, he was a pastor of our church, he and his wife, the Cottrells, Reverend Dr. Daniel Cottrell. He once, I believe this was when he was in seminary, and or shortly thereafter around there, but a fellow member of the clergy was talking about The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And they came up, how horrifying, scary that is. But then the topic came up, evil does not have to be ugly. It can come in a very, very pleasing form. And, we found that usually it doesn't rear its ugly head, so to speak, until it's really got a foothold in the situation or with the family.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so true.
I've had friends and even family members, of course, that played with the Ouija board, and it's very nice at first. I'm talking about, when it's legit. Of course, there's many times when it's just people's, their
But
psyche
they have
is
that
doing
rush,
it.
that
Yes.
paranormal rush. And it's like, wow, I just communicated with a being from another dimension. Absolutely, it's a rush.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
it is. And it's a feeling of exaltation at first, of power and everything, but it can consume your life.
Which would be with the second stage is that obsession.
Yes.
And it can be obsessed about anything. It just draws you away from the family, gets you focused on yourself. And yeah, absolutely. And you're right, beauty.
Yes.
There's a beautiful book I read one time called The Beautiful Side of Evil. And it's so true.
That is a good title.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is, of course, because Lucifer himself appears as an angel of light. So.
Yes, exactly. Now, of course, you did serve your country. You were in the military. Do you have any experiences while you were traveling in the military?
Yes, yeah. Again, back to reference to Hawaii. When I was down in Hawaii, it was a sergeant I was working with, and he was crying. What is going on? This was during the time when I was getting the call. The call into ministry, and with that, it seemed like the call into the Deliverance ministry, and this guy, he was crying. He goes, the cops are going to come. They're going to interrogate me. I'm going to be in so much trouble. Why? Well, what had happened was, make this long story short, but it was his friend that had betrayed his girlfriend. He was American. He was Filipino. And they both were Filipino, actually. And we're in Hawaii. Betrays the girl, cheats on her. And a curse was placed on him.
Right.
So they're at this feast. I think it was like for Christmas or something. And there was another friend of the girlfriend who suffered manic depression and I think just some mental illness, but he literally fell into a trance, got up from the table, grabbed a knife, and stabbed my friend's friend in the neck, killed him instantly. And then wanders off, falls down, comes to his senses. He's bawling, he's freaking out. He doesn't know what happened. He literally murdered this other guy. He didn't know how he did it. And the curse was that this man, if he left the Philippines, he will never return alive.
Really?
And the curse was placed on him. This guy was vulnerable. He was possessed and literally stabbed this other guy. And now, the sergeant that I was working with, his girlfriend his wife was related to that family. And every time he and I talked, she would go mad and threaten him. So I had a suspicion. Come to find out, she also turned out to be possessed.
Really?
And she finally got delivered. Some guy came along, did his thing. And actually, she turned into the powerhouse that literally brought them to church on a regular basis. But yeah, pick a place. And somehow, I'd always end up in a situation where somebody has an issue.
Right.
And it's a genuine issue. I mean, how many people say that they see a ghost or their cat sees a demon when it's floating around? It just turns out to be a dust bunny floating in the air.
Right.
Absolutely. So yeah, you get all those things.
Yeah,
you got people not taking the meds. But there are those times when there is and there are certain hallmark signs you and I both know to look for. And when that happens, it's time to go to work.
Right, exactly. And of course, as you've mentioned, part of your deliverance ministry is exorcism. You are an exorcist. You've had to perform exorcisms.
Yes.
And not something that somebody should just enter
Absolutely
into without
emphatically
preparation.
No. It takes time of consecration. It takes time of your own cleansing. And for instance, you cannot be an exorcist if you do not have a connection with God. It just doesn't work. And you are literally going face to...
The sons of Sceva found out in Acts 19.
Acts 19, 7 sons of this Jewish exorcist who was more like a shaman, like the Kabbalist.
Right.
And they thought the name of Jesus was some kind of incantation, and of course they found out that it didn't mean anything.
Right.
It's about the relationship. This is the other thing I noticed. How many times you hear stories about priests going to somebody's house, blessing it, and it's worse because the priest himself did not believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, of course,
that's a great book.
Right. A lot of people are familiar with this. The Demonologist by Gerald Brittle, which details the career of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And
I never met them.
Never met them?
No.
Yeah. Well, Lorraine is very, very, she's older now and very kind of infirm, but...
Well, I know Johnny Zaffis.
Yes.
So at least I'm one person away from
him. Yes, exactly. Yeah. John, of course, is Ed's nephew, his blood nephew. But I don't know how well you can see this, but this is just some pictures of things, manifestations of furniture has been thrown around.
Now, you worked with them, right, over in the Burbank?
Yes, a long time ago, many years ago. But here's the things that are flying around, and
if you don't know any better, and you see that power manifested, that would really charge you up. They're oh my gosh, this stuff is real. I want more of this.
Oh yeah. Well, some people say
absolutely.
Yeah. Some people like to provoke in that way, but there's this pipe there, and this is a family in Connecticut. We're going through this. See, it's actually, supposedly, this was done by a demonic entity.
Wow.
The force of that.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so how do, I know that recently you've opened up a branch of your ministry, and it's called Ephesians 6.
Yes.
Yeah, could you say a little about that, please?
Absolutely. Ephesians 6 is a ministry that I decided I would start because I was having a sense that God is moving. God is doing some great things, and there's an increase in the supernatural. It's been growing, and I get calls on a regular basis, genuine calls. Because, well, again, I'm thinking, I've got these different groups that I do consulting for. So they'll call me on the phone. Once they've established it's a demonic entity or whatever, then I don't have to deal with all that. I can go directly there. But there are going to be times when I'm not going to be available. So I started training up just a couple people and got them to the place where they were comfortable enough to deal with cases. And then I increased it, and it's open now. It's open to anybody who is interested, anybody who will meet certain criteria.
Right, who's willing to learn and cooperate.
Then we will train them, raise them up, and get them to work, because at the time, well, there's an ancient prophecy that says that in the last days, the darker will get darker, and there'll be greater supernatural manifestation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So.
Yeah, and we're seeing that more and more.
Absolutely.
We actually are.
And we're getting ready.
All right, and of course the book of Ephesians in the New Testament, Ephesians 6, right, St. Paul, and specifically talks about the armor of God.
Yes.
And of course, the time that Paul lived in, he's describing the armor that a Roman soldier, a centurion, would be fitted with.
Yes.
And the leather, the breastplate.
Everything. And if St. Paul was around now, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he used Iron Man's armor.
Oh,
it covers everything.
Good analogy.
I use that analogy a lot, but I can see where St. Paul would use the helmet of salvation, the sword of spirit, is the word of God. That means you're receiving guidance from heaven.
Right.
Breastplate of righteousness means that God has made you right in His sight.
Yeah.
That's important, because when you're face to face with an evil spirit, that evil spirit has already done its homework about you.
Right.
It's going to make you feel guilty and not worthy. And as soon as you start weakening, it will try to defeat you there on the spot.
Yeah.
It's going after two things. It's not only going after the person to keep it, but now it's looking for a weakness in you so it can then attach itself to you.
I recently had a spirit try to put a guilt trip on me.
That's what they do.
As I was doing some prayers in a house, blessings. And
you didn't call me?
Well, these things that just happen suddenly. You get called in, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen when.
Right.
But there was a time, actually, when I had this on an EVP, where electronic voice phenomena, where somebody else was saying, "Oh, we don't want you to leave," and I'll leave, and played the EVP back, and there was only two of us in the basement at the time, and a voice said, "He does,"
Yeah.
But anyway, we're almost out of time. This has been fascinating. I told you we'd just start this topic, and it would
it's awesome.
be over in no time at all. But certainly would like to have you on back again.
It would be my honor and privilege.
Yes.
Thank you again for having me on today.
Okay, and people can contact you.
Yes.
Father Ed Brodrick.
Can I give my email?
Yes.
Yeah, it's my email is CRYOUT. That's cry out. CRYOUT 333@gmail.com. You have a problem, like the A-Team. If no one else can help, and if you can find me, maybe I can help you.
All right. Okay. Well, we wish everybody the blessings again of the holiday season. Safety. Our prayers are with you, and so many things happening in the world today.
Yes, indeed.
Day by day, we hear more of these, terrible reports that are happening all around the world. So, we pray for you and pray for the world, and pray that we will all be watched over by a higher power.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been my privilege.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to be kept really busy in the coming year.
Well, once I'm endorsed by you, I'm good to go.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.